is Judith Bogner, and to my right, Yonca Brunini.
Yes.
Just in 3 lines, her job is to be the vice president of one of the most interesting companies on the planet, a word that we use every day when we look for something, which is Google. As vice president of marketing in Europe, Middle East, and Africa. You have more than 20 years in marketing under your belt, not just new technology, new economy, but also old economy, coming from Unilever, moving on to Yahoo, and then eventually Google. Since 2006, you have teams spread over 30 countries in Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And if I may mention, one for me stands out because that's how I heard about Yonca before I even heard about this conference. It was through a book written by one of the figureheads of the Egyptian Spring, Wael Ghonim. You may have heard about his appearance on stage or on social media stage, if you will, through the Egyptian Revolution. And he's written about you in his book, Revolution 2.0, The Power of the People is Greater Than the People in Power. If you just give us a little bit of a flavor of what that was when you heard that one of your team members got missing somewhere in the Middle East.
Yeah. Thank you, Judith, for that lovely introduction. Has anyone heard of Wael Ghonim, just out of curiosity? Yay, a few hands.
He was one on the list of the Times 100.
100,
yes.
It was a while ago. So Wael was a member of my team, leading marketing in Middle East Africa. He called me to say, I'm going to Cairo. He was based in Dubai, and he said, I'm going to Cairo this Sunday for holiday. I said, okay, since when do you call me when you go on holiday? Great, have a great holiday. And then the next phone call was from his wife to say that he disappeared. And this was just when Egypt was in an upheaval and Tahrir Square, everything had just begun. So first I called someone senior in the Middle East office. I said, we have to look for Wael. And they said, let's wait for the dust to settle. It's chaos here. How are we going to find him? And I thought, I can't tell his wife tonight when I call her back that. And so anyway, there's a great security team at Google. Long story short, thus began the search for Wael. And then not knowing if he's on holiday, if he disappeared en masse, or if he was singly targeted. Anyway, we did a lot of things, every hospital, every morgue, every police station. He wasn't anywhere. And in the end, he was with the Secret Service, and he was released after 12 very long days. But what I like about the story, there's a whole book on it by Wael, great TED Talk by Wael. So, but what I really...
He's probably alive because of your assistance.
He's alive for sure. I don't know if it's because of me, but certainly not for my lack of, and everyone at Google's lack of trying. But I think what I really like about that story, and I'm glad you brought it up, Judith, is I've been at Google for 10 years now, but I think it's a company of very strong values, and I think your values come to life. You can say, I believe in freedom of expression, I believe in, all my employees are valuable, but when someone disappears on his personal time, so as a company, first of all, you're not obliged to do anything, and then it looks like his last picture was in Tahrir Square. He's wearing this he's got this militant look with a helmet going, things exploding behind him, like is he some sort of extremist?
And he's a top-level manager.
He's a senior manager, but then he looks quite suspicious. And then actually, the more you find out, you're like, well, he did try to do something against the government. So that's not, what do? We don't want to be politically involved, but really believing in Wael and just finding him because we all love him, no matter how it may have looked. It may have looked like we were politically aligned with him. At some point, from the highest level of Google, it was like, just continue searching.
You were backed up by your hacker.
I just said, I just want to double check with you because it's looking like he started the revolution, which is was the phone call. And they said, just continue looking for him aggressively, and I'll never forget that.
I have the greatest respect. Yes, on behalf of many people in Europe who watched the unfolding in Egypt, thank you. Seriously.
Thanks to Wael.
So when I looked at your career and what you do at Google, also the story of Wael, it occurred to me that you have a pivotal role in what I perceive as the 2 main processes of transformation that humanity is undergoing at this time. And they're very much entwined, and we're all a daily part of it, even if we're not aware of it. One is the digital evolution or disruptive technological revolution, if you will, and your role in a global demographic and economic shift from the Western developed world with an aging population, certainly here in Europe, in Japan, and in the United States. And then there's this other big group that is also part of your remit in countries like in the Middle East, with a young population that's eager to adopt new technology that is quite innovative. A lot of the new talent is coming from these countries, not just, of course, Middle East, but also, for example, Asia. So you seem to have this pivotal role, you're right in the middle of all of that. So give us a flavor of how vital you perceive, from your perspective, this role to be also looking at the aspect of digital skills having become such an enormous area for the European economy, which is, yes, dominated by old economy, dominated by large corporations that are still doing many things with paper and pen, if you will.
I think it's a question of our times, isn't it? Digital disruption, and first of all, you don't have to be small, or a large company can also be disruptive. It's not as cute and cool when you're very large and disruptive. I think people liked us more when we were smaller and disruptive. But I think that we are also disrupted. So when the transition from desktop, which if you think about it, we were really a desktop company, desktop, Google search, that's really our root. And I think if we'd missed the switch to mobile with our users, definitely switching to mobile and searching and living their life on their phones, if we'd missed that, we wouldn't really be relevant today. So we also get disrupted. And Sundar, our CEO, talked a lot about being a mobile-first company. It's interesting to me, and I think to everyone in this room, that the thing he talks about the most now is we are an AI-first company, artificial intelligence-first company.
Yes.
So if mobile was the first disruption to our business as well, I think AI is to every business, and I won't go on. I could go on, and Sundar has much better speeches on that, but I think that really I owe it to share that with everyone in this room. And then, so how do we deal with that? What is our role? And you mentioned that you referred to it.
Disruption.
That is, it always happens
there you have
to me,
it.
There's a role that we need to play in Europe, especially. This is what I think about a lot. There are 900,000 jobs that are going to be available in Europe
they cannot be filled
by the year 2020.
Yes.
They cannot be filled by people because they don't have the digital skills. And yet there is high youth unemployment, there's high unemployment in Europe.
If you look to Spain, Portugal, these
exactly,
countries,
exactly. So a couple of years ago, we said that as Google, what is the biggest way that we can help in a way that maybe only we can help, but in a really big way. So we said we're going to train 1 million people in Europe. We've already achieved that number, so we doubled it to get to 2 million by the end of this year. We also added another 1 million Africans to be digitally trained on the continent. So I think acquiring the right digital skills will be a big preparation.
I can add to that story today on the FT, you may have seen it. Consultancies are bypassing, by now, Oxford and Cambridge, top UK, top European universities, grads, in order to reach out for graduates with digital skills in competition to the likes of Google and other companies. So digital skills, rather vital for the future and easily picked up by, as we said, young people in the Middle East reaching out to the likes of Facebook for revolutionary interest. Let's talk about the wave of revolution into Europe. Google has been very much involved in assisting the integration with various tools. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So we have, you mean in terms of how we're helping startups in the startup scene in Europe?
But the refugees in Europe, all these young people from the Middle East coming in from Syria and other countries. You've been very much involved in that.
Yes, yes, it's really an issue of our time. So it's hard not to be involved, like I'm sure many of the other businesses in this room. And so we said, again, what is the biggest way that we can help refugees and be a part of this big European issue that is not going away? By the way, disclosure, I'm Turkish. There are 3 million refugees in Turkey, but it wasn't just a personal passion. It's really a big priority for Google to take part in this. And of course, if you think about it, what's the biggest role that we can play is connectivity. So we have various efforts from giving Chromebooks, I must say we're in pilot phase. So piloting giving Chromebooks in Germany, giving connectivity, Wi-Fi or cellular with partners in Turkey. In Lesbos, where we're now looking more at refugees in transit rather than those who are settled, whether they're in a camp or in cities. In Lesbos, it was more about this info hub. Where do you go? You know, just a very, if you look at it, it looks really bad because it's actually meant to work as an information hub on low bandwidth, which is the kind of access they had. So where's the nearest Ethiopian camp? Where's the nearest Syrian camp? How do you get there? Also our product.
Building bridges between.
You know, Google Translate, getting Arabic to other countries, just improving the Arabic translation so that people can communicate. And we are piloting. We also raised money. I mean, that's the thing I should lead the most with. But I'm always more excited about ongoing product and support. But obviously, we raised 12 million euros. I think it's one of the largest amounts raised, which we invested in UNHCR, IRC, those companies that are doing great work with refugees.
What's the most Googled word in Syria?
Oh, the most Googled word in Syria is Germany.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Quick link back to digital skills and digital evolution. Revolutionary thinking is actually the topic of our chat. We are probably all aware that US companies are dominating the technological scene, and yet there is also startup culture in Europe. And that's where also a lot of these young people are coming that are working for the likes of Google. So how active are you in that landscape?
So I'd like to say that Europe gets not the credit that it should. So sure, we have...
We like to hear that.
Yeah, it just needs more in terms of our startup scene. So we have 40 what they call unicorns. I have no idea who came up with that word, but companies that are startups that are valued for over $1 billion. And that number is growing. We've had 10 net additions, so 13 additions, but 3 failed, which is actually a low percentage rate. But 33% growth, so there is a significant amount of unicorns in Europe, from BlaBlaCar to Skype to Rocket Internet, and all of them, and they're growing at a very fast rate. And as Google, we have something called Campus. So Campus for Startups. We have one in London in the Silicon Roundabout, as they call it, near Old Street Roundabout, where we've trained about 50,000 startups. We have campus startups for moms, for dads, for over 50s.
So also for the older generation, yes.
For the older, we have this in Tel Aviv, Berlin, Paris. So we have Google Ventures, which has a fund to invest in startups in Europe. So I think there are great startups. They are growing at an accelerating rate in Europe.
Where do you see the strongest pickup of what you have to
When
offer?
you look at, if you take a snapshot, UK is the largest market in terms of the number of unicorns, but I see crazy innovation coming from everywhere. I mean, Waze is an Israeli startup, for example, and Eastern Europe is bustling. Eric Schmidt, our chairman, was asked in a conference, which do you think is the most digitally advanced country? And he said, Estonia, which is a very digitally advanced country.
Which is
they call themselves Estonia with whole e-government. So there is, you can Yahoo that or Google that, but
the Estonian former prime minister is the digital commissioner for the EU.
Exactly.
So,
but I want to say one thing that I'm just perceiving from this job that I have is the approach to innovation in Europe versus US. In US, do you mind if I talk about that?
Our time's up, but I think you finish your thought. You finish your thought.
20 seconds, so I'm going to say it very quickly. What I see in Europe is we worry first, and I'm a European, so I can say this, and then we embrace innovation more often than not, whereas in US it's a bit the opposite. And we both have something to learn from each other, but I'll give an example from Google. When we first launched Street View, the ability to see your house on Google Maps, the Germans especially, very privacy concerned, just wanted their houses.
I can vouch for that.
We've talked about this before. The Germans really wanted their houses blurred, and they didn't want to be there. And they said, just delete it. And we said, well, if we delete that source data, it's just gone forever. Are you sure? And they're like, absolutely sure. And what's the biggest request we get from Germany today is, put my house back on Street View. I want to sell it, I want to give my friends directions for it, or, for whatever reason. So I'm just giving a little black and white example. It's never that black and white, and privacy is a top of mind for all of us. And maybe, maybe it should be more in the Americans, but there is something about our culture that sort of pushes innovation a little too much and then embraces it a bit too late. That I'd like to end on that thought and say, let's
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
A round of applause for Judith Brunini.